Welcome back to How to Tickle Yourself. I am your host, Duff McDonald, along with my co-host, Joey of Rockledge. We have a repeat guest for you this week. Her name is Tara Bach, and she is one of Rockledge's favorite artists. Tara lives just down the road a bit in Saugerties, in the basement studio of the beautiful house she and her husband are building. She churns out one piece of delightful art after another. We were introduced to Tara by our old friend Billy Ferrara. He told us to check out her art online. Before we knew it, Marguerite was taking art lessons from her, and we had her art on the walls of our house, currently behind Joey in the frame. At the last Rockledge Rager, our annual party that got a little waylaid by COVID, she painted portals for us in the forest, as well as the door to our cabin in the woods. Joey and I even took our friends Kevin and Denise to an art lesson from Tara this Valentine's Day, and she got yours truly to paint the first thing he's painted in years, a heart, which all makes sense because Tara's kind of like Joey, a walking, talking example of love incarnate. But she is also a super spreader of light. Her attitude is light, her art exudes light. Her Instagram account is like a sunbeam of inspiration. Even better, around the time that my life got turned upside down when I wrote Tickled and saw the face of God, something similar happened to Tara. She either touched or tapped into the source in a very similar way that I did, and she found herself anew or discovered her true self for the very first time or something like that. I'll let her give you the details. Welcome back to the show, Tara. We're so psyched to have you.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful introduction. I'm blushing.
At the present moment, traveling town to town, the mystery of the motion, right here, right now. Right here, right now. Whoa, right here, right now.
So, we've had you on here before. We've talked about your art. So listeners who want to get some background, we got a couple episodes with Tara. As far as I can tell, like any art is changing all the time, right? But from where I sit, your art has taken a new direction recently. A, am I right about that? And B, if so, can you describe it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of, I'm trying to process and meet at this intersection of, this love for light, like you mentioned, and these themes that keep appearing in my art, like cycles and that evoking of the light, and then also kind of morphing it into more representational. I love learning the metaphysical and different archetypes and kind of incorporating those meanings behind it into the work. And yeah, finding that intersection of the two, discovering that process has been really interesting. How do you keep my favorite elements and then incorporate my new favorite elements?
What are your new favorite elements right now?
My favorite elements, I still am really connected with color and nature. That's always been the theme.
Yeah, I've noticed a lot of like a sort of forestscapes and the light within the forest.
It's like you came back down to earth. A lot of your earlier stuff was up in the cosmos, right? And now when I like, as often as not, when I see something on your Instagram, it looks like a sort of a mystical forest of some sort.
Yeah, I love mystical forests. I love kind of like uncleared paths, like with that uncertainty, and you're like, am I going to go down this way? And there's light coming through, and there's a lot of those elements kind of peering in. I Yeah, I don't know. I just kind of roll with it too at the same time. Like every day when I go to create, it absolutely depends on my mood or what I've been surrounding myself with, how I paint, even to the way my marks are made, depends on like how I feel that day and how I want to be expressing myself.
Which also comes through, like you're like a dual track artist for us too. Like there's the paintings themselves, and then there's the Instagram around the paintings, which is its own sort of second kind of art. You are, as you know, one of the masters that I know of Instagram. How do we get you to take over the How to Tickle Yourself account?
Yeah, we could definitely work on that
in your spare time.
Yeah, so tell us about how, you know, how do you think about all that? Because it would seem to me that you spend you know, not as much, but you spend a lot of time making your posts, which is different than making art. So how do you see the two, as different or the same, or it's all one thing? What sort of guides you in, like, when you're going to paint, when you're going to make a beautiful post?
Yeah, so I've learned to incorporate it as another creative practice. So I invite the camera in along with my creative tools as I'm working. And I get really playful and experimental with my camera now in that sense, because being able to articulate that feeling I have that day when I'm creating is also really inspiring to me as well. And then I just have that for later on. So being a mom of three, and with the turn that my art has taken, like my art takes a lot longer of a process now than it used to as well. And so, what this has kind of gifted me is the opportunity to kind of marinate in whatever I'm doing and give it more time and kind of spend time with whatever's kind of evolving in that process. And then, as I'm thinking and kind of being inspired by the world around me, I'm able to look back and piece together these parts and incorporate music. I mean, having the ability, in my opinion, with having this form of video is so perfect for visual artists, because there's like, what good is showing a picture of your art? You know, like the whole part of the creative process is movement and it is evolution. And now I can bring people on that journey is just like really cool.
I love
So just
that
trying
you
to,
just roll with it. You take it and
yeah,
incorporate it and make it part of it. It's the way to go.
it's fascinating. I mean, my process is by far my favorite part of creating. It's not even about like what happens at the end, because if I'm expecting it to be great, it's always shit. So if I just like have a good time, it's a win.
It's the journey, not the
It's
destination.
always the journey.
It's a great
Yeah.
point, because your art has always it's one of the first times that I truly sort of realized what motion in a static picture looks like. Right, the two paintings behind Joey, for anyone who's not looking at it, one is a sort of a cosmos thing, and the other is two koi swirling around each other. So you capture that movement, but it's still ultimately static. So you're showing us the movement in the creation of the paintings as well while you're doing it. That's great. I love it. And what has you see, it seems to me you're in like more than one kinds of online communities of different artists, different kinds of artists. Tell us about those.
Yeah, I'm in quite a few online communities. I have one which has grown really big. I joined that one. It's called the Art Queen Society at the beginning of COVID. And I was one of the original members. And I think now it's got over 500 community members. And that society is just mind blowing. It is literally just, if you could tap into anything you'd want to know as being an artist. There's so many different art forms. People are just really generous with their information and want to support one another. It's just a wealth of like, it's like the encyclopedia if you want to ever do anything. You could just reach out and somebody's there to support you, which is amazing. And then I found a connection with this group, Art Moms United, and they are over in where in the Ukraine, in not where are they, not Ukraine, in Europe, and It's a small, intimate group, but that's the group I ended up stumbling upon my spiritual guide at the day after I had my spiritual awakening. And she helped support me through the whole process of like figuring out how to stay grounded. And yeah, there's a few other ones that I'm involved in, but I like to lean
All right,
into whatever's calling.
we just got to the good stuff there. I didn't use the word spiritual awakening in the intro, but that's clearly what happened. Tell us what the sort of status of your relationship with the spirit is right now. Like, how has it changed since then? What are you doing to cultivate it? Any new thoughts? Any insights that you've had in the last while that sort of have jumped out at you?
Yeah, so I guess the last year was just incredibly introspective and taking a look at whatever it was that that moment had kind of happened, and how do you integrate your new awareness and into life as it was, and finding that balance and discovering, purpose, almost like rearranging back into like what your purpose is now, because you evolved so much in this moment of time. And so just finding my grounding in that, and then leaning towards whatever I've been called to. I got into studying human design this year, and it changed my life. And now I'm sharing the system with people. And so I don't know.
What do you do to ground yourself? I mean, you have 3 kids, you're an artist, like you're building a house, you have chickens, which I know take a lot of time, or can. So what do you do? How do you ground yourself and sort of keep yourself centered and focused and clear?
Yeah, I mean, that has been probably one of the hardest things to work around this past year. I've never had to like focus on doing it because I just did before. And so finding presence in the present moment and redirecting my thoughts. I try in the morning just to, I don't know have you ever read The Artist Way?
Yes, ages ago, but morning pages.
So leaning into those morning pages and brain dumping and directing my creativity is probably the most grounding thing I have to do, because I have a lot of that creative energy and it has to go somewhere. So just making sure I have time to either, if I write it, that's where the video comes in handy, like being able to express myself that way. Wherever I could put it, that's like not on other people. So it's the best.
And what about human design? Can you explain that a little bit, and why you're drawn to it?
Yeah. So last time I was on here, I was just amazed at Betty and her astrology and how I could not believe the reading I got from her.
She's
and
great.
It just like lit something up in my head. Like, how is this even real? And then it's wild. And then through my spiritual guide, she had mentioned something about human design and to look into it. And I did. And it was so mind boggling to me that there was this system out there similar to astrology. So what human design is a combination of different ancient modalities, like the Hindu chakra system, the Kabbalah tree of life, quantum physics, astrology, and let's see, there's one more thing. It'll come to me later. But so it incorporates all these different modalities into our quantum design. It's our physical body and spirit. And you get these different energies that make us a whole. And what it does is it helps you understand how your aura works in the world and your energy, and how do we put out energy, or how are we made to, like, where do we take it in from people, and getting out of it. What it does is support you. And how do you get out of your head and into your body?
That's the trick. Our mind is so distracting,
Joey and I were talking yesterday about the fact that because we're sentient, sense-driven beings, we are preoccupied with those things which we can sense and measure. And so we end up overlooking things like the energy that you're throwing off, because we can't see it, we can't measure it, and it's only systems of thinking like the human design you're talking about, where it sort of reorients us to thinking about the things that we can't see or smell or hear, but that are absolutely there, and we need to tap into them in a different way, right? Intuitively, basically. Okay, so what do you when you say you share the system with people? What does that mean? You're teaching?
So I've been giving human design readings, so similar to like the astrology reading, but with this system.
I want one.
Yes, I can't wait.
And so how do you incorporate that into like your daily life? How does it affect you? It's just, can you talk about that just a little?
Yeah, definitely mastering again helps me ground. I have actually a really unique, everybody has a unique design. There's not two people in this whole world that are alike. But actually, Deb, this is funny because you've mentioned this to me before. I think even on one of the podcasts you said, I saw Tara and I looked at her and like, she knows something. I think that's even what you said. And that is the energy, I guess, according to my design that I put out. And so understanding my design and knowing like just how important my environment is and my strongest senses, and being able to like lean into that and helping me navigate, because not everybody has that magnet monopole, that gut instinct to help them. And so I understand now, like my environment's really important into how I'm supposed to feel.
So it seems like it helps you take a shortcut to figuring yourself out rather than have to live your way into it like for 40 or 50 years.
Living life to the least resistance.
It's interesting because I, Duff 1.0, as Joey likes to say, was very intellect driven, right? So I was like a lot of people where what you knew was something that we would figure out when I heard you talk and tell me the things that you knew about and whether I thought you were smart or not. And then run into someone like Joey, whose knowing seemed to be of a very different sort. And that's the same thing I was pointing out when I was talking about you. There's people who, now that I'm more attuned into it, there's people that have a better interaction with reality than the rest of us, and sort of a better way to work, to go through your life. Joey, what's your secret?
My secret? I don't think I have necessarily a secret. I'm just winging it. So, I mean, I'm trusting my intuition. I think Betty has a lot to do with how I am and how I move through the world. Like, she gave me a pretty solid foundation of spirituality, and that we're way more than just our body and just our mind. It's like we are all of those things, but we're way more than that. And I grew up with that. And so I kind of started off, she started doing astrology. I think I was 7. So it's like I've been in meditation when we were 9. I was 9. So it's just my whole life. My whole life has been a spiritual journey. It's not like it's like I don't remember having a specific awakening the way both of you did. It's just sort of been kind of a long, slow, gradual process for me. So it's like you said, there's no one way, there's no one type. We're all just unique. There's a way for everyone.
Let's talk about our art lesson on Valentine's Day. One of the things that was really fun about it is you were encouraging us, and you did this in your classes with Marguerite, and I think we talked about it before, that nothing's ever, there are no mistakes. Nothing's ever like a failed painting. You just keep going. And as much as I was trying to remember that while we were doing it, I kept having my mind take me down into little potholes of failure. Right? It's like, oh Christ! Now it was good for a second, and now I've screwed it up. And then I try to do it again, and you'd come by and be encouraging. So when you teach these art classes, what's the takeaway for someone who wants to paint more, is afraid of it? What do you tell them? What did you tell us? If I can't even remember.
You have to keep pushing through. You have to know that, again, it's the journey. It's not it's not about the final thing. You're always building on top of skills. You're always, every time you pick up a paintbrush, it's always evolution. You got to let go.
Yeah, we've been talking just spiritually about viewing everything that comes your way as a gift from God. Everything like that. And so when you take it, it's like it completely changes the way you look at something, right? Like it totally changes your mindset of, oh, I don't want to do this thing, to, oh, this is a gift from God. Let's see what happens. And I think that's something that you live with your art. Like it's something you've completely put into practice. At least it seems like it from this end.
Mm-hmm. And it has its ebbs and flows as well, but always coming back to that, the curiosity for me always is like my window into getting back into alignment with my creativity.
Tell us about the koi. There's a painting behind Joey. It's so beautiful. Where'd that come from?
I don't know. It was one of those things. I had that painting, and as it was evolving, and this happens throughout my work, I'll just look at it and I don't know, I'll all of a sudden say like, oh, you know what, there would be a great element of balance in here if I had two, objects kind of with each other. And then I chose the koi. And then I always look at the information part afterwards. So I'll see what comes through. I'll see what colors I leaned into. I'll see what imagery I used. And then I'll go and like do some research afterwards and be like, oh, I wonder what was kind of subconsciously coming through in an oracle type way afterwards.
And what do you do if you're just stuck? If you don't feel the slightest bit creative, how do you just forget it or go for a walk, or what do you do? How do you bring the creativity back into your life when you feel sort of jud?
Yeah, I have different ways I lean back into my process. So if I'm getting too rigid, I will use uncommon tools or lean into making a mess and just really forgetting any kind of like normal way of being. I like put my hands all in it and just get really playful and messy. And then something in that letting go period always breaks through. And then you're like, oh, I forgot why I was so like uptight and bound into my thinking brain. But I've really solidified this set of tools to use anytime I get into that mindset.
I loved when we did a class with you. You took us for a walk through the forest and you're like, if there's anything that gets your attention, just pick it up. And so we collected all these like little like sticks and little leaves and things like that. And then we painted with those. And it was so much fun because I guess it just did that. I didn't think that, oh, now I'm going to try and paint something because I've never really painted. You're like, okay, just dip the twig into the paint, see what happens. And so it was really just a lot more about playing. It's so much fun. I never thought painting was going to be fun like that, but you've made it really, really enjoyable. It's great. Yeah,
I've also had a class one time that we painted with flowers and just did mark making with flowers and using all the parts of it. I love to buy myself flowers and have them in my studio, and then I paint with them afterwards. And so then I feel like they completely serve a purpose.
Permaculture, everything has a dual purpose.
Nothing gets wasted.
So I feel like I can't name any of them now because they're eluding me, but your Instagram is Bach.Terra. I'm sure I have found other artists through you online. For people who want to follow some interesting accounts, who are some of your favorites that you've either met or discovered recently that you follow?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know.
We can add them later.
Yeah,
we can put them.
I'll send you some later because I get a little bit in my own world a bit. I think it helps my creativity and stop comparing. So it's not that I don't like love and support so many other accounts. There's just so many, and I don't know if I currently have a favorite. But
all right.
Yeah,
all right. Well, we can leave it at this. I'm looking at your account now. You follow 1,800 accounts. So for listeners who want to check some of that out, you can go in there. What about where do you sell your art these days? What's your does online lead to a lot of, do you make sales digitally? Like where do you sell the most of your art?
It's where we got the
I
koi.
sell, yeah, I sell most of my art online through just sharing it and putting it out there. And somebody finds a connection and reaches out or emails me, goes to my website, and it kind of just flows.
So you don't like, have you had a proper gallery showing recently, or do you have any coming down the
Yeah,
pike?
I have a group show coming up at Opus 40. It's a local show, a part of the
Oh wow.
Sardi's Artist Studio Tour. And I do a few group shows with them during the summer season. However, after COVID, a lot of the gallery shows that I've been invited to are online and virtual. So I haven't had to like ship the artwork anywhere, which is kind of great. I had my first solo exhibit through Art Moms United, and that was really awesome. They did like a whole virtual tour. They set it up, and you can go, like, it was as if you were walking into a gallery, and you can go up to the painting and see it. I mean, definitely different, but it's a neat opportunity to have. I sold a large piece through that, and yeah, I don't know. Online's just been, I mean, for now, online's been a great avenue for me to go with having the 3 kids, because it gets so
Right.
difficult
Right.
to be moving these paintings all around.
What about so as you know, one of my brothers, Steve, is an artist. He is all in on AI in a mind-blowing way, using Mid-Journey and some of those other things.
Yeah.
From what I can tell, you haven't really dipped a toe in those waters yet.
No, I don't feel called to. I really don't have a calling to get into the AI thing. It's like using filters. I don't like to use filters. I think it will obscure my ability to stay thankful for what I have. But I don't, there's a big controversy online in the arts community about the AI and them stealing property rights, and a lot of upheaval about that. And I'm just like, I think it'd be kind of cool if someone took my work and did something with it, but it'd be nice if there's a way we could eventually get some credit thrown our way, right? I don't know.
Right. We just saw our mutual friend Alex Aliumi last week, and he's still solidly in the material camp. He's doing really crazy. What would you call those, Joey? Kinetic.
They're kinetic, so they move. So they're sort of like discs that spin either different directions. Yeah, they're wild. But he's doing a ton of those. Yeah, he's doing some wild stuff. He was walking us through sort of his process and how one painting came about. And it's so great. Like, I love hearing artists talk about this is how this came into being. It's like, which is why I think your Instagram is so appealing.
What about that actually? What about actual moving art? Or do you get enough of that from doing video? Right? Like a piece of artwork that moves.
It sounds really intriguing. I really like the idea. Or even lights and having things incorporate. Who knows where things will go in the future?
I could see this one spinning.
Yeah. I do.
Anything
I love
is
circular
possible.
canvases too. Anything is possible.
I'll put it on a spinner.
Or layered plexiglass, different elements,
Yeah. Okay.
We're onto something.
Sold.
So tell us, so our favorite part of your new house that you and your husband are building is the hand railing going up from the main floor to the second floor.
The tree.
Tell us about that again. That's one tree. What is that?
Yeah, we have 2 trees in our house so far. The one is the hand railing, and he went out. I remember my husband one day, he went out into the woods. He's like, I'm going to go find a tree for our railing today. And really he's so creative and set his mind on the form of the tree would take. And he found the perfect tree. Who would have known? And then spent so much time preparing it and curing it and then sanding it to perfection to have this beautiful tree be the railing going up our stairs. And then we also have this giant tree as the main, what do you call it? that provides the stability of the house.
The
Support beam, something like that.
Yeah, thank you. You need that one. That. We have a giant tree as our support beam through the house.
And is it almost finished?
Yeah, the house is almost finished. We actually sawed all of the flooring lumber ourselves and sent it out to a kiln. And so it's cool. All the trees are from here.
That's amazing.
And then, so we're waiting on that and like waiting on our heating system and a few other things, but we're so close. I just painted the whole cathedral ceiling last week myself, which was terrifying.
What, up on scaffolding?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it got a little sketchy because, I'm kind of short. And so I had like the scaffolding and like a plank across the top of the scaffolding. And I was like, it's terrifying, but I'm going to keep pushing through.
Have to strap yourself in.
Yeah.
And I noticed in some of the Instagram, your kids are in your studio a lot with you, right? Or some of them, like what are they? From standing from the outside, my guess would be that a child, it would be a distraction. You seem to find them an addition to the process.
It depends. Sometimes it's tough. They're into everything. And so I love them in the studio because especially my middle child, he's very close to likeness of how I create. And so sometimes he comes out with these amazing ideas, or he's like a really tough critic. And I'm like, okay, I get it. I got to work on this thing. And I enjoy him in the studio a lot. He's really curious. So I just kind of teach him to come in and how to set his own work up so I could do my thing. And there's plenty of space for him to do his thing. And I have plenty of supplies for them to get their hands on. So he's all set. He's 7, but my daughter, who's 3 years old, she has to really be supervised. I've never had a kid quite like her. You don't leave that studio without like holding her up and like away from your body because she just fully covers herself. And oh my gosh, it is such an adventure. But they love being in there, and like, who wouldn't? Like, my mom has all these colorful art supplies in this magical space. Like, how would I tell my kid they can't be involved?
She uses herself as a canvas, right?
Yes.
All right. Amazing. So listeners, I told you it's Bach.Tara on Instagram. What's your website again?
It's tarabachart.com.
tarabachart.com. Check it out. Some of the most delightful both paintings, but also posts you will find online. It's like a breath of fresh air every time I go to check out what's happening in the outside world. What's our best piece of advice from your human design that you give to people? Someone's stressing it. Someone's finding life difficult. What do you say to them?
To trust the journey. There's no good or bad. There just is.
I see you agree with that, Joey of Rockledge.
I do. It's like the situation's neutral. It's thoughts about it that make it good or bad, right? So we layer on our own judgment, but if we look at all of it as a gift, right? Changes everything.
I absolutely believe that. And, no matter what you're experiencing, it serves a purpose. It's a gift from God.
On which note, thank you very much, Tara. Great to
Thanks,
see you
Tara.
again. You're a delight.
Thank you, guys.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
I love her. Every time I talk to her, I'm inspired. Like, I'm inspired to go on social media and I do like 2 or 3 posts and then I lose track. But she's great.
I hate to beat a dead horse here, but for listeners who haven't done so yet, go check out her Instagram. It's Bach.Tara. The posts are just amazing. They're so fun. They're so happy. And that, like she said, they showcase her art in a slightly different way than just putting up pictures of it. She shows you how she makes it. And Tara's methods are actually kind of startling too, because it does not seem, at least to me, careful enough from at the beginning. She's just sort of moving stuff around. And then at the end, you have this beautiful, sort of nicely, finely detailed piece. But the way she gets there is by a lot of movement. And she even told me one time, it's not just the way she gets a lot of the movement in the paintings is by movement of herself, right? So it's not just painting stuff up here. She moves a lot when she does it. So it's a really fun thing to watch. And, her stuff was always sort of full of light and just sort of so inspirational. But I think in the last year in particular, it's taken on a whole new aspect, which is
mystical.
Yeah, you can see the light. Tara saw the light, like, basically,
Yeah.
and it's ending up in her paintings. It's so great. And the patience of Job, that woman, because she's 3 kids.
She never seems rattled.
Never seems rattled.
No.
And is always just a delightful presence. We love her. So, I've got 2 things for you, I think. Let me see.
Do you have one for me? You don't have one for me?
I've got 2 for you.
Okay.
The first one is there's a kind of construction in sentence formats where people flip things that I always love when I see this. I don't know what you would call it, but it's sort of relevant to Tara's art. This is from Swami Nikhilananda. I was reading a book about Hinduism this week, and he has the following sentence. He's talking about, you need to kneel at the altar of absolute reality, if you will, if you want to, ever understand what's actually happening here. And his sentence was, idealize the real, and then you will realize the ideal.
That's great.
I don't know what's that's called, but you read those every now and then when someone sees that you can sort of invert 2 words. Idealize the real, and then you will realize the ideal. You like that one?
I do. Just like wordplay.
But
it's a wordplay.
Like deep wordplay.
Well, this one in particular,
wordplay.
Yes.
And the other one I sort of mentioned to you in passing the other day. Same thing. Nikhilananda was writing about so there's this issue of the notion of karma, which is essentially the residue that you gather and accumulate through your actions in life, right? Because we exist in kind of a play of opposites. So whatever tension you give or receive is sort of creating its own. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction, but in a much more profound way than the sort of basic science notion of that suggests. And he was talking about what the goal ultimately is for you to be able to float through the world without, it's like a leave no trace thing, but in a spiritual way. And he says, as a fish swimming in the water leaves no mark behind, or as a bird flying in the air leaves no footprints, so a free soul moves in the world unnoticed by others. In his presence, turbulent minds become quiet.
I love that one. It's a little bit
Right.
like what we were talking about with Tara about sort of when you're judging something as good or bad, you're forming an attachment to it either way. Like it's it's a good attachment or it's a bad, but it's still an attachment, which brings about some karma.
Yeah, and if you look at her art, she's we've got the fish thing behind you there, but also her cosmic stuff is, she's just sort of floating through these areas and realms of movement herself. And like she said, it's the journey that matters. So you don't want to get stuck on anything, but also just keep moving, right? And not don't sit there trying to grasp onto anything or not letting something go. So her art is a pretty good example of that. And then to close, we're back to our friend Sri Aurobindo. And I found a great quote from him in an essay called "The National Value of Art." He was basically talking about, why we need artists. And he says, behind a few figures, a few trees and rocks, the supreme intelligence, the supreme imagination, the supreme energy lurks, acts, feels, is. And if the artist has the spiritual vision, she can see it and suggest perfectly the great mysterious life in its manifestations, brooding in action, active in thought, energetic in stillness, creative in repose, full of a mastering intention in that which appears blind and unconscious.
Wow, that is perfect.
Right?
Yep.
Tara, you can have that one for free. We're giving stuff away for free on how to tickle yourself. That describes to me what she does. Yep. She sees the supreme intelligence, the supreme imagination, and the supreme energy lurking behind the things that are in everyday life, and she shows them to us.
Yep.
In her
divinity
art.
Comes through her, right? She's a conduit.
Yeah. So thanks for that, Tara. We appreciate it.
We do.
You help us see the light.
Every day.
Thanks for listening, folks. We'll be back with you in a week.
Bye-bye.
At the present moment, traveling town to town, the mystery of the motion, right here, right now, right here, right now, whoa, right here, right now.
You've been listening to How to Tickle Yourself with your hosts Duff McDonald and Matt McButter. You can help us by liking, subscribing, and sharing this podcast with others. You can talk to us and see what else is happening on Instagram and Facebook at How to Tickle Yourself. This program was recorded in Studio B of the historic Rockledge Recording Studio and the Tunnel under Arundel. Right here, right now, our original 16-part theme music was written and recorded by the legendary Paul Reddick and Kyle Ferguson of the Sidemen, with the brilliant Steve Mariner on bass and drums and in the mixing room. The podcast is produced and distributed by Storic Media. Our editor is Andrew Steiner. Our coordinator is Samantha Abramovitz. Our producers are Kristen Verbitsky and Chuck LaBella. For more information, visit storicmedia.com. That's STORIC media.com.
My love, my dear.